Hi everyone, this is Yakovlev channel and the digest news about war in Ukraine. The main event of the last few weeks was the raising of the Ukrainian flag from Bakhmut city on the main square of Vilnius. Yes, literally from Bakhmut city, the city in the east of Ukraine that Russians wiped off the ground. President Zelensky arrived to the NATO summit in Vilnius. And yeah, this is Russia's greatest fear – security guarantees for Ukraine from NATO. And, of course, an invitation to become its member. President of Ukraine, Zelensky, discussed with his partners, military aid, the issue of an invitation to NATO and security guarantees for Ukraine on its way to the alliance. According to the result of the summit, the following is known. The defense ministers of France and Ukraine signed an agreement on the NATO summit in Vilnius, which provides for an increase in military aid to Ukraine. Then the Minister of Defense of Ukraine signed a memorandum with 11 colleagues on the creation of a coalition for the training of F-16 fighter pilots, and actually Biden approved the training of Ukrainian F-16 pilots in European countries. Then, Australia will provide Ukraine with a powerful defense package, including 30 Bushmaster armed personnel carriers. Norway will provide another 1,000 ultra-small black omet reconnaissance drones. And Ukraine and Sweden signed an agreement on the exchange of secret information. Well, NATO summit in Vilnius was really difficult, but successful for Ukraine. In other words, at the end, we have strong defense agreements and a joint declaration of support for Ukraine agreed by the G7 countries. It's actually an important step towards concluding a system of bilateral security agreements between Ukraine and individual guarantor countries regarding security guarantees for Ukraine. The agreed declaration is a great result, which was preceded by many months of daily work of our Ukrainian authorities at the level of National Security Advisor of the United States of America, Great Britain, France and Germany, as well as in communication with other partners. The declaration itself is a framework general document. The next step, as it was mentioned before, is the conclusion of a system of bilateral security agreements between Ukraine and individual guarantor countries, united by the framework of multilateral cooperation. The key thesis of the declaration is confirmation of the fact that the security of Ukraine is a component of the security of the Euro-Atlantic region. This statement is supported by the mention of Ukraine's future membership in NATO. NATO guarantees show Putin that he will not survive Ukraine. And by the way, there is one funny news. Even South Africa announced that they should do the right thing when Putin comes to the BRICS summit, and actually express a desire not to see him there. In addition to the NATO summit, 14th meeting was held in the Rammstein format on July 18. So, what the bottom line is? The priority is the supply of weapons and equipment urgently needed for the liberation of Ukrainian territories. Focus on means of anti-aircraft defense, ammunition and armed vehicles. In addition, after the good news from Rammstein and the NATO summit, according to the Washington Post, Joe Biden, President of the United States of America, approved the provision of cluster munitions to Ukraine. And Ukraine has already received them, and this cluster munition can fundamentally change the situation at the front. Ukraine, of course, already use cluster munitions on its territory, minimizing risks for its own population. The cluster artillery projectiles that the United States already sent to Ukraine have a fight range of about 29 kilometers. If fired from a distance of 7 to 10 kilometers from the current front line, Ukraine can reach 100% of the first line of Russian occupied trench fortifications and 78% of the second line of occupiers' trench fortifications. Additionally, Biden and NATO leaders unanimously approved a substantial new aid package for Ukraine. And CNN reported that in addition to the already mentioned cluster ammunition, the aid package included the following items: additional ammunition for the Patriot air defense system and for HIMARS, 31 howitzers of 155 mm, 32 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, 42 Stryker armed personnel carriers, anti-tank complexes TOW, Javelin and others, high-precision aviation ammunitions, small arms and more than 28 million cartridges for small arms and grenades. In addition, Reuters reports that the first French long-range Scalp missiles have already been delivered to Ukraine. France began supplying Ukraine with a significant number of large-range cruise missiles. Currently, Russian terrorists concentrated more than 180,000 soldiers in the east of Ukraine, 100,000 strong group in the Limano-Kupiansk direction. The enemy went on the offensive in a large group in the Kupiansk direction. At the same time, Ukrainian armed forces completely seized the initiative and destroyed the occupiers in the Berdyansk direction and are preparing an offensive in the Kherson region direction. However, the minefields laid by the Russian occupiers are the biggest obstacle to the counteroffensive of the armed forces of Ukraine. So the liberation of Ukrainian territories isn't happening as quickly as we would like. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly recognized Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism and the Wagner military campaign, these Wagner mercenaries, as a terrorist organization. This was announced by Kravchuk, deputy head of the People's Servant Parliamentary Faction of Ukraine. The Parliamentary Assembly also calls on the member states to strengthen international norms that clearly recognize the terrorist nature of the Wagner mercenaries and its actions, as well as the responsibility of the Russian Federation as a state sponsor of this terroristic organization. Let's talk about terrorist collaboration and some type of little betrayal. Iran and Moscow. Surprise! No, actually it's not surprise. Iran and Moscow created a company under the cover of Albatross plant, which will be engaged in the production of Iranian kamikaze drones Shahed that Russians fired and launched over Ukraine, especially at night. A factory of the production of those kamikaze drones is planned to be built in Tatarstan. Albatross plant openly sells agricultural drones to the Russian Ministry of Defense, but the FT source claims that Albatross plant will also manufacture Iranian kamikaze drone Shahed. And about betrayal. Russia produces drones under the license of Israel. This was stated by the Israel ambassador to Ukraine, Brodsky. According to the diplomat words, the agreement was concluded back in 2010, perhaps the only one in the defense sphere between the Russian Terroristic Federation and Israel. At the same time, Israel isn't hurried to transfer weapons to Ukraine, as it fears that they may fall into the hand of terrorist Russian Federation and then to Iran. Further, components from the United States of America, Germany and Japan continue to be found in the wreckage of Russian missiles. And this information according to Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. As indicated in the article, during the inspection of the remains of Russian missiles, the presence of Western countries' components is increasingly noticed. The United States is, at the first place, is up to 81% of what was found. Switzerland, 8%, and Germany and Japan, about 3.5%. Russia continues to circumvent Western sanctions through other countries. Also, foreign parts were also found in the drones with which the Russian terrorists usually at night attack the south of Ukraine. As a part of rotation, Russia has currently withdrawn almost all of its military from Belarus, where they underwent training and preparation. This was reported by the spokesperson of the State Border Service of Ukraine. At the same time, the Minister of Defense of Belarus said that the Wagner's mercenaries will be instructors of the Belarusian army. In Belarus, a large convoy of Wagner mercenaries was spotted. And as it was mentioned before, this Wagner mercenaries was recognized as a terroristic organization. And at first, it was at least 60 cars and trucks with license plate of the temporarily occupied by Russians territories in the east of Ukraine, like from Donetsk and Lugansk regions. In general, currently there is in Belarus there is 6 convoys of Wagner vehicles, and there is actually about 2,000 Wagner mercenaries in Belarus. Training and combat centers have been created in Belarus. On July 17, the Republic of Belarus ratified the agreement with the Russian Terroristic Federation on the establishment and operation of combat training centers for joint training of military personnel of the armed forces of Belarus and the armed forces of Russian Terroristic Federation. The decision to establish those centers was made in March 2021. Then it was reported about plans to create 3 centers in the Nizhny Novgorod and Kaliningrad region of the Russian Federation, as well as the Grodno region of the Republic of Belarus. Azovstal defenders from Turkey are returning to Ukraine. And this is a big victory, as we know that Russians, and I don't know why, really afraid of our Azov defenders. The military commanders who defended Azovstal and then, after being released from Russian captivity, were exchanged in Turkey, and now they are returning to home. But unfortunately, even today, thousands of Ukrainians are held in a network of prisons throughout Russia and in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, where they are subjected to torture, psychological violence, and slave labor. This is confirmed by an investigation by the Associated Press. The Russian occupiers use captured peaceful Ukrainians to dig tranches and mass graves, torture and deport them to the territory of Russia, violating the Geneva Convention. The newspaper found out that many people were detained for speaking Ukrainian or for staying in the occupied region and were kept in custody, often without charges. Others were imprisoned as soldiers or on suspicion of terrorist activities. All the former prisoners with whom the Associated Press spoke told about torture. Beaten to the point of fractures, electric shocks, imitation of strangulation. Many claimed to have witnessed the death. I guess most of you already heard about Crimea Bridge, that illegally built between the illegally occupied Ukrainian peninsula Crimea and mainland of terroristic Russia. The Crimean Bridge is a little tired last week, and as the Russians would say, it was built negatively. Part of the carriageway fell into the water thanks to surface drones. Russia, of course, was offended. Reuters resource reports that the Russian Federation has withdrawn guarantees for the safety of shipping in the Black Sea. Naturally, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, condemned the termination of the grain agreement. But Russia, a terroristic country, established a naval blockade of Ukraine immediately after the end of the grain agreement. Of course, Ukraine, from its side, is considering a new route for the grain deal through the waters of Romania and Bulgaria. Then the Russian occupiers, of course, they were so offended. And then they hit Odessa with missiles, of course, as usually at night. They also got to the port, seaport. The Russians destroyed 60,000 tons of grain in the port of Chernomorsk. As a result of the night missile attack, a significant part of the seaport's grain export infrastructure was also put out of action. As our authorities said, The Onyx missiles, which the occupiers have fired over the south of Ukraine for more than 3 nights at a row, fly at a speed of 3,000 kilometers per hour, so it's difficult to detect them. This was the main news about war in Ukraine for the last few weeks. Stay with us on Yakovlev channel, support Ukraine, of course, stay safe, and remember, together we're working hard to achieve victory, a just peace and better future. And of course, aid to Ukraine is the best incentive for the world economy. Слава Україні! Героям слава! Glory to Ukraine!